What happens when a late-night host decides to ambush one of Hollywood's biggest stars with deeply personal questions she never agreed to discuss? What you're about to see is the moment Jimmy Kimmel crossed a line that should never be crossed, turning what was supposed to be a light promotional interview into a public humiliation that left Jennifer Lopez visibly shaken and the entire studio in stunned silence. This is the story of how one man's ego and desperate need for viral content destroyed years of professional respect in just 15 minutes. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment because this story gets more shocking with every detail. The green light flashed on, cameras rolled, and Jimmy Kimmel's familiar grin spread across his face as he welcomed his guest to the stage. Jennifer Lopez walked out in a stunning silver dress, waving to the cheering audience, her smile radiant and genuine. She had appeared on the show multiple times over the years, always bringing warmth and charm to what had become a comfortable, predictable dynamic between them. "Ladies and gentlemen, the incredibly talented Jennifer Lopez," Jimmy announced as she settled into the guest chair, crossing her legs elegantly and adjusting her dress. The audience erupted in applause, and Jennifer blew a kiss toward the crowd, her energy infectious and bright. "Thank you for having me back, Jimmy," she said, her voice warm and melodic. "It's always such a pleasure to be here." "The pleasure is all ours, trust me," Jimmy replied, shuffling through his note cards with what seemed like casual confidence. "You look absolutely stunning tonight, as always." "Oh, you're too kind," Jennifer laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I have to say, I love what you've done with the set, very classy." The first few minutes unfolded exactly as expected. Jimmy asked about her latest project, a romantic drama that had been generating Oscar buzz. Jennifer spoke passionately about the role, describing how she had connected with the character's journey of self-discovery and resilience. Her eyes lit up as she discussed working with the acclaimed director and the months of preparation she had invested in bringing authenticity to the performance. "The character really challenged me in ways I hadn't experienced before," she explained, gesturing gracefully with her hands. "She's dealing with loss, with betrayal, with having to rebuild her entire sense of self. I found myself drawing on experiences I thought I had moved past." Jimmy nodded along, but there was something different in his expression. His usual easygoing demeanor seemed forced, and his smile appeared more calculated than genuine. He kept glancing at his notes, then back at Jennifer, as if weighing something in his mind. "That's fascinating," he said, though his tone suggested he was only half listening. "Speaking of rebuilding and moving past things, I have to ask you about something that's been on everyone's mind lately." Jennifer's smile faltered slightly, a barely perceptible shift that only someone watching closely would notice. "Oh? What's that?" Jimmy leaned forward in his chair, his voice taking on a more serious tone that immediately changed the atmosphere in the studio. "Well, there have been some interesting developments in your personal life recently. Some pretty explosive revelations that I think our audience would love to hear about directly from you." The audience fell quiet, sensing the shift in energy. Jennifer's posture straightened, and her media-trained smile became more guarded. "Jimmy, I thought we were here to talk about the film. That's what my publicist arranged with your producers." "Oh, we absolutely will get to that," Jimmy said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But you know how these things work. People want to know about the real Jennifer Lopez, not just the roles you play on screen." There was something unsettling about the way he emphasized the word real, as if implying that everything else about her was somehow artificial or calculated. Jennifer's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and she shifted in her chair. "I've always been authentic with your audience, Jimmy. I don't know what you're getting at." Jimmy's grin widened, but it no longer reached his eyes. He pulled out a fresh note card, one that clearly hadn't been part of the original interview outline. "Let's talk about your relationship with your children's father. There are some pretty serious allegations floating around, and I think it would be refreshing to hear your side of the story." The color drained from Jennifer's face. This was clearly not territory she had prepared to navigate, and certainly not something that had been discussed or agreed upon beforehand. The audience sensed the tension, a collective intake of breath rippling through the studio. "Excuse me?" she said, her voice steady, but with an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "What allegations are you referring to?" "Exactly." Jimmy consulted his notes with theatrical precision, clearly enjoying the moment of uncertainty he had created. "Well, There are reports suggesting that you've been, shall we say, less than cooperative when it comes to co-parenting arrangements. Some sources are claiming you've been using your celebrity status to manipulate custody situations. Jennifer's eyes flashed with something dangerous. Sources? What sources, Jimmy? Because I can tell you right now that whoever your sources are, they're either lying or completely misinformed. I'm just asking the questions that people want answered, Jimmy replied with faux innocence, spreading his hands as if he were merely a neutral messenger. You're a public figure, and when stories like this surface, don't you think your fans deserve to know the truth? The truth? Jennifer's voice rose slightly, and she leaned forward in her chair. The truth is that you're blindsiding me with tabloid gossip that has no basis in reality. This is completely inappropriate, and you know it. Jimmy's mask of professional courtesy began to slip, revealing something uglier underneath. Inappropriate? I'm doing my job, Jennifer. I'm asking the hard questions that other interviewers are too scared to ask. Hard questions? Jennifer stood up abruptly, her silver dress catching the studio lights. These aren't hard questions, Jimmy. These are malicious accusations, disguised as journalism. And frankly, I'm shocked that you would ambush a guest like this. The audience was dead silent now, watching this unprecedented breakdown of professional decorum unfold in real time. Camera operators continued filming, unsure whether they should stop rolling or capture every moment of this train wreck. Jimmy remained seated, but his demeanor had completely changed. Gone was any pretense of the affable late-night host. Sit down, Jennifer. You agreed to come on this show, which means you agreed to answer questions. All questions. I agreed to promote my film, she shot back, her voice trembling with controlled rage. I did not agree to be publicly humiliated by someone I considered a friend. Friend? Jimmy let out a harsh laugh that sent chills through the studio. This is television, not a therapy session. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be in this business. The words hung in the air like poison, and Jennifer Lopez felt something snap inside her. This wasn't just professional discourtesy anymore. This was a personal attack from someone she had trusted. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice grew stronger, more resolute. Don't you dare tell me whether I belong in this business, she said, her tone cutting through the studio silence like a blade. I've been working in this industry since before you were even a footnote in comedy clubs, and I've earned every single thing I have through talent, hard work, and integrity. 3 things you clearly know nothing about. Jimmy's face darkened, his carefully constructed television persona cracking completely. Integrity? That's rich, coming from someone who's built a career on manufactured drama and publicity stunts. Manufactured drama? Jennifer's voice rose to a level that made the sound engineers frantically adjust their equipment. You mean like what you're doing right now? Creating controversy where none exists just to boost your ratings? I'm creating content, Jimmy snapped back, standing up from his desk with aggressive energy. Something you've never been able to do authentically. Everything about you is calculated, from your relationships to your career moves to the way you're reacting right now. The audience began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. This had gone far beyond entertaining television into something genuinely disturbing. Some people started looking toward the exits, while others pulled out their phones to record this unprecedented meltdown. Jennifer took a step closer to Jimmy's desk, her silver dress shimmering under the harsh studio lights. You want to talk about calculated? Let's talk about how you planned this ambush. How you lied to my team about what this interview would cover. How you're using my personal life and my children as fodder for your desperate attempt to stay relevant. Desperate? Jimmy's laugh was bitter and sharp. I have the #1 late-night show on television. I don't need to manufacture relevance like some people in this room. Number 1? Jennifer's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. Is that what you tell yourself at night? Because, last I checked, your ratings have been sliding for months. Maybe that's why you're resorting to these cheap tactics. Jimmy's face flushed red, and for a moment he looked like he might lose complete control. My ratings are fine. And even if they weren't, at least I'm not clinging to fame by dating progressively younger men and pretending it's true love. The gasp from the audience was audible this time. Several people stood up to leave, clearly uncomfortable with the direction this confrontation was heading. Jennifer's mouth fell open in shock at the sheer cruelty of the comment. "How dare you?" she whispered, then louder. "How dare you bring my personal relationships into this? You don't know anything about my life or my heart or the choices I make." "I know what I see," Jimmy pressed on, his voice dripping with venom. "I see someone who's so desperate to stay in the spotlight that she'll do anything, hurt anyone, manipulate any situation to keep the cameras rolling." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. "You're projecting, Jimmy. Every single thing you just said describes exactly what you're doing right now. You're hurting me, manipulating this situation, all to keep your failing show relevant for another week." "My show isn't failing," Jimmy shouted, his composure completely gone now. "And I'm not the one who's been lying to the public for years about who I really am." "Who I really am?" Jennifer stepped even closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried throughout the entire studio. "I'll tell you who I really am. I'm a mother who would do anything to protect her children from people like you. I'm a woman who's worked twice as hard as any man in this room to get half the respect. And I'm someone who clearly made a terrible mistake trusting you with a platform to spread your poison." Jimmy slammed his hand down on his desk, causing his coffee mug to jump and spill across his note cards. "You came on my show, to my house, and now you want to lecture me about poison? You're the one who's toxic, Jennifer. Everyone in Hollywood knows it, they're just too polite to say it to your face." "Everyone in Hollywood?" Jennifer's voice cracked with hurt and fury. "Or just the bitter, insecure men who can't stand to see a woman succeed without their permission?" "Oh, please." Jimmy rolled his eyes dramatically. "Don't make this about gender. This is about authenticity, something you wouldn't recognize if it hit you in your surgically enhanced face." The cruelty of the comment sent shockwaves through the studio. Even the camera operators looked uncomfortable, though they continued filming this career-ending moment. Jennifer's hand instinctively went to her cheek, not out of vanity, but out of the shock that someone could be so deliberately hurtful. "You're a monster," she said quietly, her voice barely audible but somehow more powerful than any scream. "I came here as your friend, as someone who's supported this show for years, and you've turned it into a public execution." Jimmy's laugh was hollow and cruel. "Friend? You came here to promote your vanity project and collect your paycheck. Just like everyone else who sits in that chair. The only difference is that I'm not pretending this is anything more than a business transaction." "A business transaction?" Jennifer's voice grew stronger again, fueled by righteous anger. "Is that what you call humiliating your guests? Is that what you call attacking their families, their appearance, their personal lives? If this is business to you, then you're the worst businessman I've ever encountered." Jimmy moved around his desk, closing the distance between them in a way that felt threatening. "I'm the host of this show, which makes me the boss of this conversation. If you don't like the questions, there's the door. Don't you threaten me," Jennifer warned, standing her ground despite Jimmy looming over her. "I'm not one of your staff members that you can intimidate. I'm your equal, whether you can accept that or not." "Equal?" Jimmy's voice dripped with condescension. "You're a guest on my show, which makes you my responsibility, my problem to manage. And right now, you're being a very difficult problem." The paternalistic tone was the final straw. Jennifer's composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped completely. "Your problem to manage? I'm not your employee, your property, or your problem. I'm a human being who deserves basic respect, something you've clearly forgotten how to give." Jimmy's response was swift and cutting. "Respect is earned, not given. And frankly, I'm not sure what you've done lately to earn it besides showing up in tabloids and social media posts." The audience had gone beyond uncomfortable into genuinely distressed. Some people were openly discussing whether they should call security, while others seemed frozen by the spectacle unfolding before them. The producers in the booth were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial or let this disaster continue to unfold live. Jennifer Lopez stared at Jimmy Kimmel with a mixture of disgust and pity that was more devastating than any angry outburst could have been. When she spoke, her voice was steady, controlled, and filled with the kind of quiet power that comes from someone who has finally seen their opponent's true face. "You know what, Jimmy? You're absolutely right about one thing. Respect is earned. And in the span of 15 minutes, you've managed to lose every ounce of respect I ever had for you, along with the respect of everyone watching this train wreck you call television." Jimmy's jaw clenched, but Jennifer wasn't finished. She had found her footing now, and her words came with surgical precision. "You want to talk about what I've done lately? I've raised 2 beautiful children while building a business empire. I've created opportunities for other women and people of color in an industry that still struggles with both. I've used my platform to advocate for causes I believe in, not to tear down other people for entertainment." "Spare me the saint act," Jimmy interrupted, but his voice had lost some of its earlier venom. "We both know your real motivations." "My real motivations?" Jennifer stepped back, creating distance between them, but her presence somehow filled the entire studio. "My motivation right now is to make sure that everyone watching this understands exactly what kind of person you are. The kind of man who invites a woman onto his show under false pretenses, then attacks her family, her appearance, her personal life, all while hiding behind the excuse of entertainment." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Several people had their phones out, recording this moment that would undoubtedly define both of their careers in very different ways. Jimmy tried to regain control of the narrative. "This is my show, Jennifer. I ask the questions that need to be asked. If you can't handle that level of scrutiny, maybe you should reconsider your career choices." "Career choices?" Jennifer's laugh was sharp but not cruel, more sad than angry. "Jimmy, the only person whose career choices should be questioned tonight is you. You've just shown the world that you're willing to destroy professional relationships, violate your guests' trust, and abandon basic human decency, all for what? A few viral clips? Some controversial headlines?" Jimmy's face was getting redder by the minute. "I'm doing what every good interviewer does. I'm getting to the truth." "The truth?" Jennifer shook her head slowly. "The truth is that you've been struggling with your relevance for months. The truth is that your ratings are declining because audiences are getting tired of mean-spirited comedy and manufactured controversy. The truth is that you saw me as an easy target, someone you could ambush and humiliate to generate buzz for your failing show." "My show is not failing," Jimmy screamed, his voice cracking with the strain. "I've been doing this longer than you've been making movies that anyone actually wants to see." Jennifer's response was swift and devastating. "Really? Because my last 3 films have outperformed the opening weekend of your show's average monthly ratings. But this isn't about success, Jimmy. This is about character. And yours is showing." The comment hit Jimmy like a physical blow. His face contorted with rage, and when he spoke, his voice was pure poison. "At least I don't have to sleep my way to the top and then play victim when people call me out on it." The entire studio seemed to inhale at once. Even the hardened camera operators looked shocked. This had crossed every possible line of professional conduct and basic human decency. Jennifer's face went through a range of emotions: shock, hurt, and finally, a cold fury that was more frightening than any explosion would have been. "There it is," she said quietly, her voice carrying despite its softness. "There's the real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the fun-loving talk show host, not the family man persona you sell to advertisers. That's the bitter, insecure, misogynistic man who's been hiding behind carefully scripted jokes and softball interviews for years." Jimmy opened his mouth to respond, but Jennifer held up her hand, and something in her demeanor made him stop mid-breath. "I want everyone watching this to understand something very important. What you just witnessed is not an interview gone wrong. This is not entertainment. This is workplace harassment being broadcast on national television. This is what happens when powerful men think they can destroy women with impunity and call it journalism." She turned to face the audience directly, her silver dress catching the lights as she moved with graceful confidence despite the emotional assault she had just endured. "Jimmy Kimmel invited me here tonight under the pretense of discussing my new film. Instead, he chose to attack my parenting, my relationships, my appearance, and finally, my integrity as a woman in this industry. He did this not because he had any legitimate journalistic purpose, but because he thought it would be entertaining to watch a woman be publicly humiliated." Jimmy tried to interrupt. "That's not what happened here." "That's exactly what happened here," Jennifer continued, not even acknowledging his protest. "And the most tragic part is that he thought you, the audience, would enjoy it. He thought you would applaud him for being cruel, for being unprofessional, for being deliberately hurtful to someone who came here in good faith. She paused, letting her words sink in, then looked directly into the main camera. But I have faith that you're better than that. I believe that when you see this behavior, you recognize it for what it is. Bullying. Pure and simple. A desperate man lashing out because he's losing relevance, and he thinks destroying someone else will somehow restore his own. Jimmy's face was purple with rage. You don't get to come on my show and lecture my audience about who I am. I'm not lecturing anyone, Jennifer replied calmly. I'm simply telling the truth. Something you seem to have forgotten how to do. She walked over to the guest chair where she had left her purse, picked it up with dignity, then turned back to face Jimmy one final time. I hope this was worth it, Jimmy. I hope destroying our professional relationship, embarrassing yourself on national television, and showing the world your true character was worth whatever temporary boost you think this will give your ratings. Jimmy's voice was shaking with fury. Get out of my studio. Gladly, Jennifer replied. But before I go, I want to say something to anyone watching who might be in a similar situation. You don't have to accept this kind of treatment from anyone, no matter how powerful they think they are. You have the right to be treated with respect and dignity, especially in your workplace. She started walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. And Jimmy, the next time you want to interview someone about their personal life, maybe start with yourself. Ask yourself why you thought this was acceptable. Ask yourself what kind of person you've become. Ask yourself if this is the legacy you want to leave behind. With that, Jennifer Lopez walked off the set with her head held high, leaving Jimmy Kimmel standing alone in a studio full of shocked faces and uncomfortable silence. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every second of his humiliation, as he realized that his desperate grab for viral content had just destroyed his reputation on live television. The audience sat in stunned silence, many of them looking at Jimmy with expressions of disgust and disappointment. He had gotten his controversial moment, but at a cost he was only beginning to understand. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Did Jimmy Kimmel cross a line that should never be crossed? Or was he just doing his job as an interviewer? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more shocking celebrity stories that expose the dark side of Hollywood.